Star Wars: The Old Republic again, a day after game update, big balance patch, big nerf patch, some small buffs in Star Wars: The Old Republic 5.3 it was. In another video, I've mentioned that I'm an old timer in gaming. I think I was 13 when Atari Pong came out, so I've been doing games since they've been invented. I was around before computer games. My point being that I've kind of seen it all. I've been around for decades doing this, and this is nothing new, what has happened. And it will continue to happen. History repeats itself again and again in so many ways, and in gaming it is extremely true. So what happened in this patch, we got some big nerfs and some small buffs, and if one were to read the forums before the patch, it's much like any other time in any other game. The game was broken and dead. The developers were the worst idiots and morons in the world. They were trying to kill classes. The sorcerer was so overpowered. There's nothing so broken ever in the history of gaming. People unsub because of the mercenary, the sniper, the commando, the gunslinger. They were the most overpowered things ever. Easy mode, God mode, brain dead, can't lose, classes for morons. The game was dying because of it. And now they all got nerfed. So now balance has been restored, and we can safely log into the game again, right? Well, it's been not even 24 hours, really, since the patch has been out. And once again, we're being told that this is the most broken game in the world, and that the developers are complete idiots and morons. They're killing the game. The game's broken because the most OP classes ever are found in this game. Only the names have changed. Now it's like, well, in 5.4, if the operatives aren't nerfed, everyone's going to unsub. The game's going to die. This class has abilities that no class in any game should ever have. It's the most OP, most broken thing they've ever seen. And scoundrels to it. And Marauders and Sentinels, they're ridiculous. Easy mode, God mode, defenses that no DPS class should have. Too much DPS, they have too much mobility. Assassins and shadows, oh my God, they're so broken. The game is doomed. These idiot moronic classes, they don't belong in a game. So we're right back where we started, which is how it always goes. So now, there's one guy who's posting all over the forums, PvP forums, the class forums, general forums, new player forums, saying how he just can't wait. He's really looking forward to the nerfs to these overpowered, overperforming, easy mode, God mode classes for casual scumbags. Because they just shouldn't exist in the game, these classes. It's disgusting. It's really pathetic. And this is why in a previous video I said as much as I can be disappointed with developers' decisions in balance making, I got to go with them. Because players, by and large, have horrible notions of class balance. I mean, you get the Force user fetishists in the Old Republic. If it's a Force user, it should never be. There should be no contest between a Juggernaut or a Marauder and an Operative. How could that be? Force user is unbeatable. It's ridiculous. It's just absurd. It's not even good, storytelling really. If a character is just invulnerable, where do you go with it? Story's over. Story's done. And then there's the people who hate melee and they love range, so they want melee to be target dummies. And you get the melee players who hate range classes, and they want range classes to be target dummies. And then there's the people who can't handle stealth, and stealth needs to be nerfed, basically made useless and a liability even. And then there's the people who, they just want a deathmatch in PvP, as I mentioned before, and they want to remove tanks and healers. And their other balance suggestions essentially do that, make them worthless. So that is what we're seeing now. And now that the sorcerers have been in the stages, the healers have been heavily nerfed. I think I was playing them today. I was playing them earlier. And, I'm okay with it. I'm not real happy with it, but they're fine, I think. However, now it's tanks that are really overpowered with guard. Yeah. So, we got to nerf operatives, we got to nerf tanks because tanks are too strong, and well, it was a good step. It was a step in the right direction, healing, with the healing nerfs. But we could use more, and of course, the assassins have to be nerfed, and the marauders and sentinels. Well, they're easy mode god mode, so they really need a nerf. They're so overperforming. It just never frickin' ends. So I was afraid, looking at the system of measurement developers have been using so far in this round of balancing, where they want everything to fit in a very narrow range of values. In my previous 2 videos, I mentioned how I think that the scoundrel and operative healer might be possibly disciplined specs that could actually be ruined, which is rare. Specs are rarely ruined. I mean, I love my lightning sorcerer. It's bottom of the barrel DPS. It really is legitimately probably the weakest class in the game. It even had its survivability nerfed a little bit this time. It certainly didn't need it. That's a confidence shaking move on part of the developers for me. But I'm trying to hope that they will not nerf the operative and scoundrel healers in such a way that they become useless, which could happen in this case, as I explain in another video, and I explain why that is. Why their health numbers, their health output numbers, I should say, their HPS looks very high, but it's very, very deceptive. They are not like they're the healer. So I'm wondering, will they do that? Of course, I don't know. We'll have to see. Maybe they won't, though. Maybe they won't. Maybe they won't be ridiculous. I mean, look, they nerfed the Sage and Sorcerer Healer pretty heavily. But, they still seem to work to me. They still seem okay. And they did something here. In this patch, they did not announce this before the patch notes came out. The developers have been pretty forthcoming with their, with information. So before the patch notes came out, there were a lot of developer posts about the upcoming class changes. One of them did not make it into these sort of pre-posts, these pre-patch posts. The patch notes today went up, and the Assassin and Shadow, they can now use Maul or Shadow Strike from any position, not just from behind a target, which is rather nice for the 2 direct damage disciplines, the Deception Assassin and Infiltration Shadow, because they do get a defensive buff from using Maul and Shadow Strike. However, if they are used from behind the target now, they still do more damage. So you get less damage if you don't use these abilities from behind the target. So they still reward you for getting behind the target. And for the tank disciplines of these 2 classes, they could always use Maul and Shadow Strike from any position. They will get a little damage buff in their as a passive in their tree. So I think it's a neat little buff. And if they didn't get it, I wouldn't be upset. Didn't expect it. But here's what I like about it. It's not the buff itself. It's that we now have these, melodramatic, hysterical lunatics, claiming that the game is now once again broken, a few hours after the patch is out. Now, all of a sudden, since the game was going to be saved by massively nerfing, the Sorcerer and this Sage and this Slinger and all this, well, now the game's just as bad as it ever was, according to these people. In fact, it's even worse than it ever was now, because we had these overpowered assassins and scoundrels and operatives. Well, maybe the developers really are ignoring these clowns. And I don't like name calling, I really don't, but I've seen this for decades and decades, and these are people who never stop. There's a guy posting on the forums now, everywhere, like I said, everywhere demanding nerfs to this. The game is going to die without nerfs to the operative, how it's insanely overpowered and everything. So they seem to be ignoring that because, the assassin is on this list that these melodramatic clowns have of classes that absolutely must be nerfed because they're so overperforming and so easy mode that there's no reason to play any other class. And the developers apparently are ignoring this since they did actually give the Assassin and Shadow some small buffs, and the dot specs got helped a little bit too. So apparently they think that they're fitting somewhere within their target values that they are going for. And I hope, honestly, I hope the developers kind of continue with this. My only outlying concern, like I said, is the sort of artificially inflated heal per second numbers that the operative and scoundrel healers have. I don't think that they are disciplines which will be amenable to this method of balancing, of making everything fit within a very narrow range of values. So we will see. We will see. I mean, I'm having fun in the game. I always have had fun in the game. So I'm not freaking out about these balance changes, and I won't freak out in the future either. But sadly, the forums are as ugly as ever. And apparently the game is absolutely destroyed now, even though, we were supposed to have been saved by all these, much needed nerfs to these incredibly God mode classes, right? So now they're nerfed, and no, the game's worse than ever. Worse than ever. So anyway, that's about it. This is par for the course. I've seen this in every game I have ever played. You can go to any MMORPG. You can go on the gaming forums, and you will find similar posts. Every game has classes that should never exist and are overpowered beyond anything that ever was, with developers that are worse than any other game. And every game doesn't put out enough content. Every game has the worst PvP and the worst everything. Everything is always, everything is always a disaster. And everything's in superlatives. Everything is terrible. And we'll see what happens next. The one sort of worry, in addition to the Scoundrel and Operative healers, which I think might be severely over-nerfed. I don't think the Sorcerer and Sage are truly over-nerfed. Is the utility adjustments, because classes that are seeing DPS adjustments now may really suffer if their utilities are hard hit. But we'll see. We'll see what happens. And that's about it.